Today, we're going to move on. We have discussed the definition of the working sort of hypothesis of anger. Anger being a mental factor, and we call it a non-beneficial mental factor. We say a negative mental factor that puts its eye on, takes notice of something that it does not like. And as that mind becomes aware of the thing or person or persons that is causing that dislike, the mind begins to ruminate. And as that mind ruminates, the mind itself becomes more agitated. And the object of your awareness, the thing that you don't like, the person that you don't like, that increases the dislike. Ruminating, keeping your mind on, ruminating, exaggerating the bad qualities. And then the mind wants to harm the object, the person, maybe not by punching, but maybe with words or thoughts. Words, thoughts, or deeds. So that being sort of the working definition of anger, a mental factor that observes an object and then exaggerates its bad qualities, becomes antagonistic, agitated, and wishes to harm. And as we use that definition in our lives, we were able to see how times that our anger is present, which is many times a day, irritation, or maybe very big anger, as our anger arises, we're able to see that yes, we focus on those bad qualities, we just ruminate over and over. And we can feel the mind becoming closed and tight. And when that happens, we are more agitated. And the wish to harm, a wish to be away from, to end that discomfort becomes a very felt experience, not only for ourselves, but for others. And in the meditation, we were doing just the opposite. We were bringing to mind someone we care about, and letting those caring feelings fill our body, letting our body relax and fill with that warmth of connection, and then breathing that out, being willing to let it go so that there's that circle of loving kindness in our lives. That circle is obstructed by our angry feelings. Our angry feelings cut our connections to others, separates us from others and ourselves, and causes so many problems. We talked about the negative qualities of anger, and one of the ones that sticks out in my mind at this moment is that it tends to ruin or cut the relationships that we care the most about. And sometimes that break is not something that can be mended. So sad, actually, and it's usually the people we love the most. So today, what we're going to do is to look at that definition just for a second more, and then we're going to remind ourselves, and if you haven't taken this class before, we will bring to mind 3 to 5 different ways that we can make a pause in the time that our mind starts to see something it doesn't like, and that inappropriate attention where it begins to exaggerate the bad qualities. It is in that moment that we can turn the destination anger around. That moment of inappropriate attention. It is so natural to see things that we don't like, and sometimes it changes day to day, but that natural dislike is just part of the way the mind works. But when we focus on that dislike, when we begin to exaggerate that dislike, that is when anger blooms. And so we need to find a way to begin with that we can put a pause, a place where we can begin to turn our mind away from that exaggeration. So many of you may remember these tools. We call them tools because they are the beginnings of what will help us. They will not solve how anger can ruin our lives, but they are tools to use to begin creating a gap, so it's not just a reaction, a sort of a gut reaction of anger. So the first one in the scriptures says to turn to wood or turn to stone. I'd like to talk about that and how we can actually do that in our day-to-day life, because that sounds pretty weird, but it's just when you notice, and the time before this, the last class, you were asked to continue to pay attention to when anger arises. And as you're doing that, you can notice when anger begins to arise, that tightness. And in that moment, if you were to just stop, turn to wood, turn to stone means no other than wood and stone are inanimate objects. They don't talk. They don't move their body into a position. They just stop. An inanimate object does not talk. Don't say anything. So that's the first one. The second one is very similar, and grade school children like this one the most, similar to freeze tag. And so in the same way, when you notice anger arising, you freeze. Now, when we're in relationship with others, we don't have to like stand there with our hands like this, but we can just stop. Have that moment of silence. Take a breath in, hold it, take a breath out. And if you have time, do that 3 times. Freeze. Take a breath in, hold it, take a breath out. Now, it is possible, after either of those, turning to wood and turning to stone, that you may return to anger. But if you are good at implementing those first 2 tools, you will find the gap. And in that gap, you can reorient your mind. The mind begins to let go of the object, to relax from the object. The third one I have listed it's also very similar, but this is teenagers or adolescents. They'll put like a hair band, those kind that stretch. I had one, but I let it go somewhere. I flew it. Or a rubber band that's not too tight. And when you find yourself, the teacher says something you don't like, the parent says something you don't like, the dog does something you don't like, whenever that happens, you just simply, and you snap the rubber band, not to harm yourself, but to give yourself that trigger to let go. It's a very pointed tool. So you just snap and you let it go, and you just back away. Another one is to look in the mirror. Now, when we're angry, we don't tend to go see ourselves in the mirror. But if you were able to catch a glimpse of what you look like when you're angry, I think we would be shocked. I have been trying this, and there's many reflections, either in picture frames or as you pass by windows. But when you're angry, you look very different than when you are relaxed, when you are in a natural, normal state. Our anger tends to make us look ugly. Our eyes sort of bulge out, the veins bulge out. My dad's ears used to go up and down, his nostrils would flare. Our face turns red, constricted, tight. Our heart feels tight. Look in the mirror. And in looking in the mirror, as in any time when you look in the mirror, we tend to sort of like clean our act up, relax our face. Another one, so they're kind of increasingly hard, is similar to when we were in grade school. I think we were taught to just walk away. So when you're in conflict with somebody, we were told just walk away. Well, if you're having an argument with your spouse or with your children and you just walk away, I used to do this many times, I would just walk away, slam the door, and leave. And in that, I am not taking responsibility for my part. And it is only my part I can take responsibility for. What I am doing is walking away, slamming the door, sort of like vomiting in the room and leaving, for someone else to clean it up. So what we do instead is find the words that are most natural to you, and you can say to your son, Jimmy, I am getting angry, and I would like to do my best to not let that anger build. So I'm going to walk away. I'm going to take a time out. I'm going to walk around the house 2 times, 5 minutes, and I'll be back. And in doing that, you can do 2 things. Take responsibility for your side of the anger. Not you made me angry and I'm leaving, but I do not feel well. I am going to take a break. I will take a walk around the house. I will take time out, and I will be back in a set time. So not only do you take responsibility, but you let the other person know when you will re-enter that relationship again. And in re-entering it, you will have calmed your anger, and if not, just extend the separation and another guideline as to when you'll be back. This is a very important tool. People tend to respect us when we take responsibility for our anger. So an interesting thing will happen. I guarantee this. The person you're arguing with will say, wait, don't go. And it is at that point where you stick with your decision. Because if you don't tend to your own anger, it will just flare up again. So please practice that one. Practice it over and over and over again. And the last one I'd like to bring up in this teaching is what we call pick up the baby. So in Thich Nhat Hanh's literature, when a baby is crying and you're in the other room, maybe you put them down for the night, but they're really crying and wailing, what you do is you come in, the baby senses your appearance, and you pick up the baby. And oftentimes in that sensing your appearance and in that comfort of being picked up, the baby begins to relax. The baby begins to feel that it's heard, listened to, cared for. And in the example of picking up the baby with our anger, we pick up our anger as if it is that precious child. And we say to our anger, I know you're angry. I understand how this frightens you or how this makes you feel. And I'm here for you. And it is that caring for ourselves that will develop into one of the actual tools that will end our anger problem. So it's picking up the baby, being there for yourself, not picking up someone else's baby, not someone else's anger and telling them how to handle it, but picking up your own anger, being willing to do something about it. And right before I end, it just reminded me of something, in that as we begin to understand our own anger, we tend to want to tell other people about their anger. And I beg you, basically, and encourage you, please do not try in any way to speak about other people's anger until you feel that you have deep understanding of your own anger. This takes quite a lot of practice and quite a lot of time, but you will save yourself further embarrassment, further humiliation, further alienation, separation. We dedicate what we have done for others. May we and others learn to live in harmony. Thank you.